Take a seat, man.
Ladies and gentlemen, by popular request, I present to you a brief history of Johnny Gat's Frosted Tips. In 2006, the first Saints Row game was released. In this game, the infamous Johnny Gat had a hair-dye style known as Frosted Tips. But fast forward to 2008 with the release of Saints Row 2, and these tips had since been quashed. But why? Saints Row fans have been pondering this question for over a decade, desperately coming up with theory after theory to try to put an end to this mystery, once and for all. Alright, I'm just joking with you. That's not really what this is all about. After all, I don't think anyone would seriously want to watch a video called A Brief History of Johnny Gat's Frosted Tips, right? What's wrong with you people? Video game publishers. Don't you just love them? No one likes video game publishers. They're kind of like mosquitoes, lurking in the shadows, only to suck the lifeblood out of you when you least expect it. They're the money men, the fat cats, the suits. If there's one thing that almost all video game publishers have in common, it's that they never seem to care about their actual products. Now, admittedly, some publishers are worse than others. For example, EA, at this point, have become somewhat of a meme in of themselves for how greedy they are. The controversy section of their Wikipedia page is so long that from afar, you might mistake it as being the sequel to the New Testament. But today, I'm not going to talk about big publishers like EA or Activision, as, after all, at this point, everyone knows these companies are awful. Instead, I'm going to talk about a publisher that not many people even know about. A publisher called Deep Silver. Ever since I started talking about the Saints Row reboot, I've been inundated with requests to do more research into the publishers of the game, Deep Silver, as a company. And, admittedly, I couldn't figure out why. I mean, what is there to say that hasn't been said already? They're just a cog in a corporate hierarchy. And, yeah, I've heard about how the reboot is indeed an Epic Game Store exclusive on PC, but again, they're a video game publisher. It's not exactly breaking news that they would make anti-consumer decisions to make a quick buck. But the more I looked into them, man, I see why you asked. Deep Silver actually does something that's really slimy, something that I've never seen other publishers do. Let me tell you a story. A friend of mine who's also into Saints Row calls me up and says, "Dude, your channel is killing it lately, great job." And I'm like, "Yeah, thanks man, it's pretty cool." Then he says, "Yeah bro, if you carry on, you might even be able to get into the collective." And I'm like, "The collective?" And he's like, "Yeah bro, you not heard of the collective?" And at this point, I'm confused as hell. I'm like, "What is this, some sort of Illuminati or something?" And he says, "Nah bro, Deep Silver has a little scheme going on called the Deep Silver Creators Collective, whereby certain YouTubers, streamers, and influencers, whatever that means, get some behind-the-scenes VIP treatment." And I was just like, what? Now, it's pretty common these days for game companies to stay close to their creators. After all, creators are often used as hubs for feedback by the greater community at large, who can then pass on said feedback to the company, who can then, in turn, use it to make a better game that will make the community at large pleased. That's a good thing. But the Deep Silver Creators Collective doesn't seem to be just a feedback-gathering mechanism. Clearly. On the contrary, the perks of being a member of this club seem, well, very generous, to say the least. Paid partnerships, invites to events, free game codes, money can't buy experiences, free merch, early access to our games, exclusive content and products, access to our exclusive Discord server. Hell, even chances to be in our games and invites to influencer events with all expenses paid, including the big ones. I mean, Jesus Christ, what is this? I mean, it's one thing to treat your creators well, but man, this really is VIP. So, what am I complaining about? This is a good thing, right? Well, honestly, no, I don't think it is.
Why the fuck not?
To me, this entire scheme looks like a clear-cut corporate charm offensive. It kind of reminds me of what happens in casinos. Not sure if you guys have ever been to a casino, but there's this stereotype that if you win a lot of money in one, then they'll just kick you out.
Okay, pal, you've had enough. Time for you to leave.
But that's not actually how it works. If you happen to win a lot of money on, say, a slot machine or playing cards or whatever, you won't just get kicked out immediately. On the contrary, the casino will actually start to offer you things like a free hotel room, or maybe even some free drinks.
Looks like you've hit a lucky streak there. You must be thirsty by now. Here, have a drink on the house and keep on playing.
Now, that seems a little weird, right? Like, why would they do that? Are they just being nice? Of course not. The idea is, by treating you nicely, they hope that you'll continue to stick around, and thus gamble some more. And, as we all know, casinos are always rigged to be in favour of the house. So, the chances are, the longer you do stick around, the more likely they are to get back the winnings that you've just made. Yeah, it's a really cheeky tactic, and it's called a charm offensive. Now obviously, it's not exactly the same thing, but I think you get the point. Oh hey guy who makes videos on our games, how about we spoil you with a bunch of cool stuff, which certainly won't have any effect whatsoever on how critical you are about our terrible decisions. Smiley face. I mean, it pretty much says it all when one of the first questions you get asked in the application form is your t-shirt size. I mean, I don't know about you, but that's a pretty odd question to ask a supposed business partner. It's almost like this club only exists to attempt to manipulate the creators within it, and thus indirectly their audiences, into being much more subconsciously lenient than they otherwise would be. I mean, why else would this club exist? To be nice? Corporations are never nice, unless there's a reason. And that reason is usually money. Remember, don't be overly commercial or salesy, or else.
My client would like that stricken from the record.
I mean, hey, no disrespect to anyone who's in this club. After all, I respect the hustle. If someone wanted to give me a ton of free stuff and treat me like a vice king, then hello. However, being a member of what is essentially a third-party marketing department inadvertently starts to put your loyalties into question. If I find out that someone I watch is getting behind-the-scenes VIP treatment by being inundated with free stuff, or heck, even all expenses paid trips to events, am I seriously meant to continue to consider that person to still be an unbiased source of information?
Fuck off.
Now, to be fair, in their code of conduct they do say that you can still state your authentic opinion on their content, but then counteract that completely later on by saying you should not intentionally look for criticisms. But, hello? That's kind of half a YouTuber's job, to look for criticisms. Anyone with even a shred of integrity when a game is put forth before them will praise it fairly when deserved and critique it as such in tandem. I mean, I don't know about you guys, but whenever a new game that I'm interested in comes out, there's a reason I go to YouTube reviewers that I trust over, say, mainstream review sites like IGN, as I find that, often, such mainstream review sites tend to be too close with the developers behind the games they are reviewing, which to me seems like a conflict of interest that I simply don't trust.
Hi guys, it's James from IGN here. Today I'm reviewing this really amazing game made by my good friend Phil. It's called Stickman. Yeah, so in this game you walk around as a stickman, and it's really amazing. I love the graphics, they're so next gen, don't you think? Oh yeah, and the sound effects are so amazing, studio quality. Yeah, and this is a tough review. I think it has a little something for everyone. I'm gonna give it a 9.420 out of 10. Yeah, awesome.
This creator collective scheme essentially repeats such distrust, just in a different way. I believe that this scheme subconsciously puts creators in a situation whereby they feel like they're stuck between a rock and a hard place. On the one hand, creators of course want to be real and legit with their thoughts to their audience. But on the other hand, if perhaps they are too critical, then they may get booted out of the club, and thus their channel will instantly lose value because they will no longer be privy to such perks and exclusive information. Hence, why many of these creators may find themselves inadvertently fence-sitting or not being as critical as they would otherwise like to be. For example, recently members of the collective got to see some exclusive behind-the-scenes gameplay of the reboot before the rest of us normal plebs. The general consensus amongst the members of said club is that the gameplay is impressive compared to past entries in the series. But is that really a surprise? Of course the reboot should have better gameplay. The last mainline Saints Row game came out all the way back in 2013, almost a decade ago. And it was designed, primarily, to run on console hardware that came out in 2006. The Xbox 360 had just 500 megabytes of RAM. The Xbox Series X has 16,000 megabytes. Now, I know that RAM isn't everything and that the reboot is also coming out on last-gen consoles too, but it nevertheless proves the point. It's been an entire console generation since the last real mainline Saints Row game came out. So, yeah, the reboot should be technically superior in every way. I mean, Christ, that should be a given, not a boast. I can only really speak for myself here, but frankly, I couldn't care less how shiny the guns are or how vast the map is if the story, aka the characters, are a joke. I don't remember Saints Row 1 because of its cars or because of its haircuts. I remember these games so well because of their story. That is what makes Saints Row to me. Layered clothing is back, 100% confirmed.
Wow! Consider me pre-ordered.
Not. It annoys me to no end to see Deep Silver dangle gameplay in front of its creators, knowing full well that they're then going to go on to tell their audience about what they saw, as this is clearly a tactic of artificial hype. There's no reason whatsoever that they couldn't just release said gameplay to everyone, except that by having said gameplay described to you by someone that you like to watch, it makes you subconsciously more likely to reconsider your stance on it. This, to put it bluntly, is manipulation. Plain and simple. You guys want a spoiler into what Deep Silver's marketing strategy is going to be for the reboot over the next few months? Sure. Deep Silver, posing as Volition, is going to release some more trailers, this time delving deep into things such as character customization, car modding, the map size, gameplay. The idea is that they're going to try to press the buttons of original Saints Row fans by trying to dazzle you with flashy gameplay features, while, at the same time, completely and utterly ignoring the massive pink elephant in the room, which is that this game looks like a narrative joke. And the worst part is, I think this tactic might actually work. As the release gets closer and closer, it will be interesting to see if people fall for Deep Silver's marketing hype tactics or stay resolute. This wouldn't be the first time that they have used gameplay as a shield against narrative criticism. Correct me if I'm wrong, but didn't they once invite a creator over to their headquarters to see the reboot during its development, then asked him to sign a non-disclosure agreement, only to show him some impressive gameplay elements while hiding the controversial narrative changes, knowing full well that said creator will then go back and tell their audience that they were impressed, only for the official announcement to eventually come around, leading to that creator getting spurned by their audience, and coming across as a liar due to not warning their audience of said narrative changes, despite the fact that they themselves were not even privy to them. And because they are now under a legal agreement, they can't even explain themselves properly without fear of being brushed off to court. Because if that's true, then there's no doubt that they just use creators as free marketing, even if that means they have to somewhat deceive them in order to do so. Bottom line is that creators in this collective should be aware that, at least from my point of view, it doesn't seem that Deep Silver really cares about you, your channel, your audience, or anything really, except using you as a potential third-party marketing asset. So yeah, I don't think I'll be applying to join that anytime soon, thanks. I'm no expert by any means, but I think the most important thing a creator can have is their integrity. As soon as that starts to be questioned, then everything starts to be questioned. It's just not worth throwing away your integrity over a bunch of purple hoodies. But this gets me thinking. Jesus Christ, is there any aspect of this so-called Saints Row community that isn't somewhat sinister in some regard? We have a subreddit that's been co-opted by a political group, a Discord server with mods that openly hate the original games, a developer who actively deceives and ignores its fanbase, and now you're telling me that behind the scenes, the publisher is trying to sweet-talk YouTubers, streamers and influencers via some sort of VIP treatment? Someone build me a time machine back to 2006, please. In the end, there's only one thing I take away from all this. and that's that most so-called gaming communities are merely overly organised, hierarchical, and often corporate spaces designed to influence and control the narrative of their products, either via a false sense of power, Discord and Reddit mods, or in the case of the collective, via attempts of VIP treatment. The real community that games provide is much more simple. It isn't servers, subreddits, or even channels. No, it's you and your friends. That's a real community. You shouldn't feel a sense of belonging with something that doesn't belong to you. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself being inadvertently manipulated. Everything should always be questioned. Remember, this is a business, not a friend. The state of the reboot's mere existence after years of fan feedback only proves that all too well. Hey, Deep Silver. So about those t-shirts.
Oh, you're breaking my heart.